What's up, guys? So I'm here to talk a little bit about this news that came out a couple days ago. I didn't do a video on it right away because, to be honest with you, I'm really tired of talking about uh, just this side of the business of the game development and motorsport games. Um, there's nothing exciting about this unless you discover something that leads to actual game development. But it is important. I do see a lot of people reached out to me privately as well as on Twitter, and I see people going back and forth. Some people seem to be under the impression that this means everything's fine now. So I'm just going to give you my 2 cents on it. As always, I have to remind you this is just speculation on my part. So I'm not going to read the whole article. I suggest you guys read it, but I'm going to cover a couple of the main points, right? So here we go. They announced company has entered into a purchase agreement with an investor. They don't name who it is, and I'll tell you my thoughts on that in a second. But for up to 2 million, which amount may increase at the company's option to 10 million. So it could go up as high as 10 million. We don't really know the exact number. So it says up to 2 million, and then that can change. First and foremost, this is not a lot of money. This is a quick shot. It's cash infusion, and I think the most this can do at the moment is momentarily give Motorsport Games a slight boost in their value as a company, where the stock's concerned. So normally, I would say this could be a pump and dump scheme where they just artificially pump up the value just to dump it right away. But I don't think that's what's going on here exactly, right? It may be happening, but on a different scale. As we look further down, it says until December 31st, 2023. That's a full year from now, subject to certain limitations. So says the investor has agreed not to cause or engage in any short selling or hedging of the company's common stock. Short selling, that's where the pump and dump usually comes in, where somebody does something, right? There are several different ways you can manipulate the value of a stock, but the most common is to drive up the value. This happened not that long ago with GameStop, and a bunch of people got together and said, well, let's all buy a bunch of stock. And they artificially created an inflation in the value of the stock. And actually, the SEC even stepped in, and I forgot what they did, but they fucking did something that you never see in Wall Street, which was to actually come in, step in, and actually stop this whole thing. And they wouldn't do that if this was some hedge fund or financial institution on Wall Street that was doing it. They did it because it's a bunch of fucking average guys who got together and did it, and they don't like that. So I don't want to get too deep in that. I am not an expert in this area, but I can tell bullshit when it's there. So let's get back to this investor. Now, I think this. First of all, I'm actually surprised anyone would pump another $2 million. I mean, like I said, I don't know the exact number. It says for up to 2 million, and that could increase to, at the company's option, Motorsport Games, up to 10 million. So let's, at best, there may be $10 million pumped into this thing at any point going forward. 2 million is not a lot of money. 10 million, okay. If we were talking about one game, one decent sized game in terms of interest, I don't know. This really is not a lot of money in the big scheme of things. When you look at all of their properties, they still have IndyCar, BTCC. I mean, these are non-existent properties, by the way. They just have the rights to them. There is no products out there yet, so it's a lot of fake. I shouldn't say fake, but just a lot of things that are based on imaginary future profits. These are all a bunch of titles. The only thing they actually have under their belt is R Factor, which they didn't make, but they bought out the studio. They have Kartcraft, again, another product that was not developed in house, right? Um, that's pretty much it, right? Anyhow, I don't want to get lost in all this, but BTCC is not a thing yet. You got NASCAR Ignition. That's a thing. That's the only product they built in house, and that's a big disaster. So they have a lot of titles under their belt that are supposedly being worked on. So when you look at this amount of money, this is really not enough to get all of these projects, you know, finished. We don't know what stage any of these games are in. They claim that they started development on the next NASCAR game, but they haven't even released the NASCAR Heat 5 DLC. That's still in the air. There's no announcements. Um, so this is not a lot of money. So people are starting to think that, oh, maybe this is going to save them. Maybe we're going to see this next game next year. I don't think so. Now, there's a chance I could be wrong. They're still dragging their feet, as I told you they would be. They're not going to go away quietly. They're going to try to recoup as much of their losses as they can. And I don't blame them for that, right? And at the end of the day, just like any business, it's all about money. So I'm not even really upset that they're trying to do whatever they can to get themselves in a good bargaining position, which is what I think really this is all about. I think this is all to put a good front. This is to, like I said, inflate the value of the company and their assets so that if there is any negotiating going on, let's just say, iRacing or someone, I don't really see anyone else, but let's just say iRacing comes along and says, hey, we want to pick up this license. And then Motorsport Games says, okay, well, you know, we can work something out there, right? As long as NASCAR agrees to it. But we also want, as part of this thing, you have to purchase all of our NASCAR Heat assets. And they have a better bargaining position because of this influx of cash. So that's, I think, where what they're trying to do. Yes, they also claim, I'm not going to read all this, but they also claim that they are still working on all their projects. Nothing's been delayed, according to them, but there's no other details. So I think it's all bullshit. They're just, like I said, it's a bluff. But in order for this bluff to work, there has to be something, right? That's where this extra investment money comes from. Now, who is the investor? Well, they're not obligated to really tell anybody names or anything, but my guess is it's definitely not a new investor. I would be shocked. There's a sucker born every minute, so you never know who's dumb enough to come in and invest, but really, I truly believe this money's coming from somebody who's already invested in Motorsport Games. Okay? So why would somebody invest more money into a company that's already lost all this money? As I said, investing into it and taking more shares, right? If they are successful at driving up the asking price, right? Or at least the shares, even if it goes up just a little bit, in the big scheme of things, depending on how much stock you own, it could be a gain. I'm not saying that you're going to make a profit, but if you lost a shitload of money in this company and you can gain some of it back, it's worth pumping in a couple $1 million, right? So I really think that's what's going on. Um, Now, I've always told you guys Wall Street is a casino, and really these people that invest, buy stock, that kind of stuff, they do share a lot of traits psychologically with gamblers, right? Like I said, it's a big casino, and a lot of times people that gamble, right, when they lose money, the first thing they want to do is gamble more so that they can try to win back some of the money they lost. Now, that doesn't make sense to normal people, but that's the way gamblers think. They can't just walk away and take a loss. If you lose $1 million, but you just think, hey, there's a chance I could get maybe a third of that back, something. If I just stay at that table a little longer, even if I got to borrow some money from a friend just so I could play a few more hands, maybe I can make some much. That's the way gamblers think. They always think they're this close to just hitting it. And investors are no different. And that's why I think this money is probably coming from someone who already has a stake in Motorsport Games. So they have some interest in doing this, because if they're successful and somehow just bumping up some of that value, maybe they can get uh, a positive buzz going about this company. Anything positive is a net gain for them. And you already see people, lemmings who don't know any better, on social media, on Twitter, saying things like, "Oh, well, maybe they're trying to right the ship, and who knows? Maybe they'll succeed, and they'll put out a better product, and maybe they learned their lesson." No matter how much people see and how much these people have proven to them, they still want to believe that something good is going to happen. That's wishful thinking, right? So obviously it's not smart, but that's the way people think. And if these investors are successful in getting this company's value to go up even just a little bit, then maybe they can recoup some of those losses. So even if at the end of the day they can get out at some point and not having lost as much, it's still a net gain for them. So I hope you guys are following, because it's easy to get lost in the weeds. But that's why I think this investment money, it's coming from somebody who already is in knee deep with this company. Um, yeah, that's just my gut instinct, right? At the end of the day, none of this really matters, because what I believe is they are just doing exactly what I'm saying. They want to be in a better bargaining position and get what, as much as they can for whatever assets they can dump on somebody. I don't think there's anyone dumb enough to come in and say we're going to buy out the entire Motorsport Games catalog. Um, Nobody's that insane. So they're going to have to, I guess, liquidate everything at some point. That's my guess. Now, I have to say, for the sake of argument, there is probably a very tiny chance that yes, maybe they somehow are trying to get back on track and just try to get something accomplished, right? That's possible. I have to put that out there for the sake of argument. I don't like ever saying never 100% on anything, because you never really know. But it's a very slim chance, and I certainly wouldn't bet on them. And you look at Dmitry Kosko, his history, the people involved. These people never made a video game until NASCAR 21. So I don't want to get too much deeper into this. Really, this is just another step of them dragging their feet, trying to get a better position to bargain. So let's move on from that to the possible future. Now, you got to realize there isn't a line of people banging down their door for their shit. They don't really have much. Kartcraft, okay, it's from what I've seen and heard, it's a decent product, but they didn't develop it. And who knows, maybe somebody wants to take that off their hands and maybe at some point in the future and move forward with it and think that they could, excuse me, and thinks that they can add something to that. I don't know, right? I'm just shooting from the hip on this stuff. The real thing here that everybody's thinking about is NASCAR, obviously. But even NASCAR, there isn't a line of people looking to get into the NASCAR game development business. There just isn't. Let's be honest. From what it looks like, the only possible developer that may want to take a stab at it and has already hinted at it is iRacing, who has Monster Games in house under their belt. They own Monster Games. Monster Games is still an entity, I guess, but they are probably on the video game side of things, whereas iRacing overall is the iRacing service. So, in either case, this is the one developer that's out there. I don't see anyone else unless some indie developer or some small developer decides we want to take a stab at it. Well, we've already seen how that's worked out with Motorsport Games, who never developed a game before Ignition. And before, not, well, I was going to say not that long ago, but it's been a while now. But remember Eutechnics? Eutechnics came out of nowhere. The only game that I remember, I know they had a couple games under their belt, but the one game that I knew about was one of the worst video games ever made of all time. What the fuck was that shit called? I don't fucking remember. It's not coming to me, but it is one of the most. It's one of the worst games ever made. But we don't want another small developer coming along and just fucking kicking the shit around for 5 years and then we're getting baby step improvements and we're begging for simple features. I don't want to see that again. So that's why for me iRacing it's either iRacing or nobody. So that's their only possible interest. So Motorsport Games, I don't know how far they want to push this thing. If they are trying to negotiate something behind the scenes or are planning to, they have to be careful because iRacing is the only serious potential buyer, and I'm not sure you want to mess with that. Like if iRacing at some point can look at this and say, all right, this is getting a little too rich for my blood. These guys are going to want more than all this is really worth to us. Let's just wait them out. They're gonna collapse on their own. Now they have been able at the 11th hour to avoid getting taken off the Nasdaq market, and now they've come up with this magical couple million whatever it is from an unknown investor. But how many times are they going to be able to do this? I don't know. They are surprising me with some of these moves, but it's just clear to me that this is standard business practice. I could imagine, this is what people like Dmitry Kosko do. It doesn't matter how much they fail at a company, they always have that golden parachute. They always end up leaving financially successful, and they leave everything in ruins behind them. And this is how he's gotten to this point where he's been able to successfully siphon all this money for himself when he hasn't done anything worthy of that money. He's a big failure, but yet financially he's successful. And people don't get away with that unless they know their way around manipulating all this shit. So that's what this is to me. That's what my gut instinct tells me. But like I said, what if they do drag their feet all the way into next year, deep into next year? When are you going to actually see a product from these people? All of these games they have listed, there's absolutely no news. If you're working on something, especially if you are where Motorsports Games is in terms of the negativity with the public, that all that stuff affects your bottom dollar. It affects you in terms of the value of the company, perceived value. So if you're going through all this, why wouldn't you release more information where you can literally announce things like, hey, we're working on IndyCar, and look, this is where we are. This is where we hope to be. Uh, this is why I'm telling you, they're not really doing anything. This is all smoke and mirrors. Even NASCAR, they announced that um, they're still, all their plans haven't changed. They're moving full speed ahead. There's no delays to anything. Well, you should have at least a game plan that you can announce to people just to get people excited. I'm not saying it would work, but you should at least try. Why aren't you announcing what the plans for this next game are? What is it that's going to make this next game different from Ignition? Instead of just the tiny bit of info that you released a year ago talking about a new game engine and a ground up brand new game, there's no information that we know of that has anything to do with the development of this next NASCAR game. It's all a big mystery. So that's what I'm telling people. This is all smoke and mirrors. So you're still going to see people out there who think that, yeah, there's a chance they may make another game. I would be shocked. Okay, and as I said before, I have to leave the door just this much open because you never fucking know when they. Who knows? Maybe they are cobbling some garbage together just so they could pump it out the door and try to get something. I don't fucking know. The one thing I do know is these people do, when it comes to game development, they don't know what they're doing. It's been a big disaster, and I'm just telling you, it would be a good idea if you really were working on something to release some information. At least show us what the fuck is your blueprint for this next game. What about the career mode? What details can you tell us about this next game that you're working on? What is it that makes this next game different? They're not talking about it at all. And if you're gonna release information, this is the fucking time to do it. But they haven't. Even though they were this close to getting booted off the NASDAQ, and now, this last minute investment, they're doing desperate shit, but they're not releasing any information. So I don't fucking believe anything until I see it. And you think this is not enough money, even if you go all the way up to the 10 million threshold. Really, when you look at the list of things that they have on their roadmap, you really think $10 million are being pumped in when they're already operating at a loss and have done nothing but lose hemorrhage money for an entire year? And you think somebody pumping in a couple $1,000,000 is going to just magically get these guys to push out real game products? Get fucking real. It's just amazing to me. No matter how much you try to wake people up, they just don't want to wake up. They want to believe things that are bullshit. So I don't know anything else. There's no news on anything coming up within the next year. They just give you a list of things that are under their umbrella. Okay, about Motorsport Games is a leading racing game developer. Who the fuck says you're leading? I mean, leading at what? Failing? Leading racing game developer, publisher, and esports ecosystem provider. Another fucking bullshit thing. What is this esports ecosystem that I'm always fucking hearing about? They put the cart before the horse. And this is what happens. They got too far ahead of themselves. They saw this esports ecosystem in their mind. Something that to this day, I still don't understand what the fuck this is. Okay? Yeah, I've seen there's been a couple of tournaments here and there that I've heard of that they lied about having 80 over 80 million viewers. So there's nothing but bullshit from this fucking developer, esports ecosystem provider. And I said that I've been saying this from day one. All people want is a fucking video game. Can you give us a fucking video game that we can just play and enjoy without any fucking hassle? A simple, I mean, it doesn't get more simple than NASCAR. It's a fucking racing game. There's no story mode. There's no adventure. There's no mystery. It's a fucking sports title. Give us the cars, give us the tracks, and then a career mode, something with some presentation that we can enjoy. That's just something you can feel like you can jump in, have fun, and you feel like you're actually a part of something, like every other fucking sports game on the market. And you can't deliver something so simple because they're always putting the cart before the horse. Even 704, when they were developing these games, it was baby step improvements, but they were always on top of that fucking DLC paint scheme shit. And that's what I mean by putting the cart before the horse. They're always thinking about how can we profit off of a game that's not even out yet or that just got released, has problems, because everything has, you can't release a fucking game ever that just works right out the box. And before you even patch it and fix it and get it to work right, you're already working on fucking DLC and shit that none of it makes the game any better. It's meaningless trinkets, and I just don't get it. These people haven't fucking learned. Just give us a fucking working product. Once you deliver something people want and enjoy and actually like, and then later you say, okay, you know what, we're going to release a bunch of DLC paint schemes, whatever, even though I think it's garbage, meaningless, I could at least live with it because I'm enjoying the game. But they don't even do that. They just shovel garbage out the door, broken, unfinished, and they're already working on meaningless garbage. This fucking esports ecosystem. Every time I see those two words together, I want to kick the fucking laptop. I just want to break it because it's so much garbage that somebody or some group of people sat there and thought, yeah, this is a thing and we're going to make it something that people want to be involved with. When you can't even deliver a fucking game, the game has to come first. So, I just want this shit to get over with as quick as possible so that somebody somewhere can make a fucking game. Because it's not going to be these guys. I promise you, if it gets to the point where they actually release a game next year, it's not going to be anything good. It's not going to be worth it. They couldn't deliver a working product in several years of development. And you think adding a couple $1,000,000 is going to make a difference? It's not. So those are my thoughts. I guess I look forward to your comments later.